health for everyone during this pandemic. We ask for your guidance in our lives, and we pray that your love would live among us. Amen.
Okay, so let's proceed to our workshop. But before that, let me introduce to you our speaker for tonight. Um, okay. He is the co-founder of Eternus Global, an IT outsourcing and medical KPO company in Iloilo City, and also the ambassador of Ops Zero. He is a web developer, open source enthusiast, and lover of all things WordPress. He has been tinkering with websites since high school, but it all changed when he discovered WordPress in 2010. He and his team at Eternus Global specialize in WordPress to help business build their online presence. When unplugged, he reads a lot and enjoys traveling around the Philippines. Our speaker is no other than Mr. Lax Mariappan. Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah,
Good
okay.
evening,
So can you
sir.
all hear me? Yeah, good evening, good evening. So can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So how many of you all know already HTML? Because I don't want to go with the same boring lectures. Yeah, hello. I mean, how many of you all know already HTML? You might studied in the school or yes, guy? Oh, okay. Just familiar but not extensive knowledge. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's get started. So for today, there will be no too many, let's say, theory or something. So we will try to do hands-on. And also, I found some lot of good courses and tutorials and stuff, so I can share that with you. And I hope that you will be able to learn something today. And in my opinion, it's like if you are going to do something in web, you are going to be a web designer or a web developer or full stack developer or something. You should know HTML well. Uh, we will be seeing today HTML5, not the older versions, and we will see. We will get started with some basic tags and some of the CSS, and let's try to also build a simple page, and then also we'll see how to post that in the MP5. Okay, let's get started. Well, I'm gonna share my screen, and I don't know how. If you have any questions, you can just unmute and answer me and ask me. So you are able to see my screens now. Oh, I don't think I have to say present right here. Okay, so I'm Lax from India, but now staying in Iloilo. I moved to the Philippines, and I started working with HTML when I was, I think, around 13 or 14 at that time. As during my sem break, like summer vacation, I was just studying HTML. At that time, I think it's 90. I'm not sure the years. So HTML, we don't have even much advanced tags and more attributes at that time. So it was very boring for me. I didn't know that I'm gonna be a web developer at that time. So I just studied some tags in HTML, and I cannot even memorize some tags. I cannot understand well at that time. But it was something fascinating. Like you write something and you can see that in the browser. So that was nice. And I started working as a PHP developer in 2010. So since then, I work with a dozen of open source software like WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, and some of them they don't exist now. And right now, maybe when you're seeing PHP, Laravel is popular, and in Python, Django, and other few stuff. So I hope you might be learning all this in your school, or if not, it's the right time. When you are a student, you should be learning something other than your what the school teaches you. So let's get started. And this is the demo I planned for today. Like, let's just create this page in HTML, and we will see that in a bit. And we will see some introduction, like the same boring lectures. Okay, so you see, this is responsive web design. You might heard of this already. You might seen this in the tutorials and some articles, or you might realized it like when you browse like Netflix in your desktop, you are going to see this screen, right? Like the image is big and you have more space, and you can see the text and alignment here. When you see in the tablet, you can see the join now button is on the top. Like there is some changes in the alignment, and you can see Anya's face is there, but here the image is bigger here in the desktop view. In the tablet, it's slightly small. In mobile view, they changed the picture itself, and the alignment and something is different. Like image on the top and the text is on the bottom. So this is responsive web design. So your application is going to respond based on the screen size, based on the device. So we will be designing that as well. And if you are going to learn HTML, what's next? What are the career options? You can be a UI UX designer. Uh, in most cases nowadays, we don't go with let's say the olden type and with PST to HTML. That's kind of old. Now we have modern prototyping tools like Figma and Adobe XD. So they have more details than it's much better than the Photoshop to HTML. So you will be creating the user interfaces and user experiences. So for that, you should know at least some level of HTML knowledge. And you can be a web designer, and you can be a web developer or a front-end developer or a full-stack developer. So the hypertext transfer protocol like HTTP, it recognizes only HTML. I mean, like no matter what is the backend or the front end, you might be using Node.js, React.js, HTML is going to be the output. Whatever may be the backend, your output will always be in HTML. Browsers know only HTML. And to run HTML, you need just a simple code editor. You can use Notepad on your machine, or you can use like Notepad++ in any code editors you are already comfortable with. And you can use a browser. In most cases, you don't need internet unless you are using some third party or other JavaScript or other the resources from other site. Unless you are using something from the internet, you don't even need an internet to practice HTML. So the HTML tags, uh, I'm sure you are already familiar with this one. So this is the document type. You need to declare it, but even if you don't declare, the browsers will do it for you. And you have to start with HTML, the opening tag, and a closing tag. And HTML is divided into like head, where your meta tags, CSS, like style, and JavaScript files will be added there. And the open graph, like for social media, open graph data for Facebook or any other like for Pinterest, LinkedIn, all the other meta tags also, they will be added in head. And for Body, it will be the the body of the website. Like it's going to have all your menus and any other data. It's going to be there in the body. So this is the opening tag. It's for all of the most of the tags except image tag. Most of the HTML tags will have a opening and a closing tag. So when the tag is open, you're telling the browser like, hey, it's where it starts. And until that, the property of the particular tag uh, will be applied. Like if you start with a paragraph and where you end your paragraph, so browser will think it's a paragraph. So the styles or any other property that you add to the paragraph will be applied. So maybe if it's a different tag, if you are adding an unordered list or ordered list, the style that you are going to determine that you are going to create the rule set for a different element will not apply to one element to another, it will not apply. But if it's a parent as a child, it will be there. So we are going to see the nested tags and also the structure tags. Okay, these are some common tags like paragraph, the headings H1, H2, H3, and up to H6. So H1 is a heading 1 is the biggest, like the size will be large. And in terms of SEO, H1 is the page title. So there should be only one H1 in the page, and other tags can be more. You can add more H2, H3, H4, but the H1 tag should be one, and that's for SEO. Uh, when you are creating a page, you can add actually more H1 tags as well if you want to add more headings, but it's not recommended. It's not a good practice. And for anchor tags, anchors are the links. They add the hyper links, like you are going to refer one page to the other. It can be a page within your website, or it can be a page in the other website, or if you have any download link, uh, or just it's a dummy link just for JavaScript. So whatever it is, you will be using anchor tags. And the division, content division, we will use the div tag more often and just to divide the page into multiple sections. And for for the header, footer, and the content area, HTML5 has tags like header, footer, and main. Main is where you're saying that this is the main content of the website. So let's go with the attributes. So there are many attributes, and there are global and specific attributes. So the class, ID, and data, and some elements like the form elements has their own attributes. So if you are going to learn each tag one by one, you should be learning their attributes as well. And this one, mostly their names are suggestive. So when you see the name, you can able to predict or you can able to understand a bit. So class is the name of the CSS rule set, and ID is the identifier, and the data is like if you want to add any data to it, like for example, um, in this tag, if you want to pass any more data, like this is the first paragraph or something, like if you want to add any more data, you can use the data attribute. So, and this is one of the common memes, like you might be aware of it, right? Like HTML is not a programming language, and you cannot hack anything with HTML. Yeah, so uh, it's not gonna happen. I hope so. Like maybe you or your friends or someone is don't even as a joke. You don't say like, oh, hey, how you code? You can say like, I just create websites. Maybe you can say, or I create a markup, or I just create layouts, or just simple HTML. You should answer like that. You should not say like I program in HTML. That's different. I use HTML or I know HTML and I just create a layouts or pages. That's nice, but don't say I am programming in HTML. That's not a right notation. That we should not say like that. Okay, and these are the common attributes like class, ID, and style. So style is the inline style. It means like you can add CSS style in a separate file and you will include it. But if you add the style directly to an element, that's called inline styling. Like it has higher priority. So your browser will use the inline style that is specific to that element than the common styles that's attached to the file. And the title, like title is mostly used for when you place your mouse over, like on the hover, when you place your hand over on it, it will say what is it about, like the alt tags of an image or the title of a link, so the user will know. These are helpful in accessibility, like if a new user is going to just place mouse over on their link. If you have a title tag, it will say like, if this link takes you to this page, like it will give the hint. So it's a good practice also to use titles, but not for all elements, like maybe for links, it's a good practice. And we should be practicing some tags. I'm not sure if you all already got the Scrimba links. I'll share it in a bit. Let's see. Let's go to, okay. I have to review the code. CSS. Okay. So this is the basics of CSS here. You can see it's a rule set. We are declaring the paragraph. We are declaring the rules for the paragraph. So here you are saying the property versus property value, and CSS itself, uh, it has more attributes to learn, like there are more properties to add, and also there are certain property work with certain elements, or the certain property doesn't work with combination of other property. Like for example, if you have a background as a color, and you can mention it as a background color. If you have background as an image, you can say background image. Like, but you can use the combination of both color and image in a single tag as background. And you can also define like how the what's the background size and things like that. So there are a lot of stuff to learn here in CSS, and there is no limit, there's no end for CSS. It's like no matter how, um, let's say, no matter how many days or how many weeks you're learning CSS, there will be still more stuff will be left to learn. So the golden rule is to learn the basics. You learn the basics and then just keep practicing it. And once you get familiar with it, you should be uh, going for some CSS-based frameworks like Bootstrap, Foundation, and then what else? Now Tailwind. The Tailwind is kind of popular and it's really nice. And personally, I kind of like using it. And also the other one we missed, like processors, like CSS. If your application has more style sheets, you might be end up using a lot of CSS in your application. So that will make the website slow, or let's say it become bulkier, and sometimes you don't need the CSS for that page, but it might load all the CSS files there. So that's kind of olden days. So in modern tooling, we are not going to use all the CSS as it is. So instead of defining the rule sets for every element, we will go for some globally predefined styles, and we will just let it apply by itself. That's where we are going to use modern tooling like SAS as a compiler, and like Tailwind CSS and like SCSS or SAS. So they will compile the CSS and they will generate it as a single file, and it's going to be very helpful. And if you are using a runtime like Webpack, your CSS will be compiled in just a fraction of seconds, and like you don't have to even refresh, and you can see the changes there. So, yeah, that's kind of it. So, if you all have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we can move on to the next slide. So, this is the basics of CSS. And then we are going to That's okay. So that's it for my presentation because I don't like to stop. Let's make it as an interactive one. So when you have doubts, you can unmute yourself and just let's get started with this. I'll share the Scrimba link here. Okay, that's the Scrimba link. I hope you all can access it. So when you access it, either you can, yeah, there is an option to go like this, right? So you can fork it on your. How many of you have Scrimba account? So if you don't have it, it's just easy. You can use your just GitHub profile and just get it. And you can see as I type, you can see the code. Try to just maximize the font size just so that it will be visible. Hello, yeah. Okay, here I have a CSS file and I just added it to this HTML. And this is the link. This is how you should add your CSS file to your HTML file. And the file naming convention is just suggestive. You can see a CSS file will end with .css and HTML files will have .html in their names. And I just start HTML here, and in the head I add the CSS here. And there is a body tag, and I have some text here, and then I just wrap this content in the body section, and then just closed it. And in Scrimba, when you just run it, you can see the preview here. Okay, let's go. If you have any messages, you can just leave me here in Google Meet. We don't need that. So here. Yeah. So let's get started with some. I'm just going to type another line of code here. So let's run and you can see the preview. So naturally, when you see I think it's because of the size, it cannot accommodate it. I have zoomed it. So you can see that naturally H1 is bigger than H2, and paragraph is in the paragraph size is small. It's almost same like Microsoft Word or any Word document. And here there is a small mistake in the code. Is there anyone can tell me the mistake here? You can just leave a message or you can speak up. So this one is not required because headings are going to be in bold typeface, like they're going to be already bold. So the font size, the weight of the font will be already bold, so you don't need it. So if you add a strong, I guess it will not make any difference here. See if I say strong. Yeah, when I say strong, it's going to be the same. Whereas if you use strong for a paragraph, it makes some difference. And Scrimba has automatic closing, like it will auto-complete the tags. Though it's not recommended for absolute beginners. So if you know the tags, it's good. And so when you see here, so now everything is in bold. The font weight is bold. So here we start the paragraph and we start emphasize here that we are saying strong. And it makes the text appear font weight. It makes the font weight bold by default. And we are closing the strong, and we are also closing the paragraph. Yeah. And when you nest the tags, it's a tree structure. So it's like it should start and end correctly. For example, this one is wrong. So the paragraph starts here, strong starts here, but the strong tag should end first. The paragraph should end next. So for example, if you run it, it still works, but it's not. It still works, but it's not the right way to do it. Okay, so let's get into some nesting. So all these pages are blank, and if you fork this in your Scrimba account, you can actually add the code and you can ping me here. If you are already in Scrimba, I can see your. Uh, I guess so far no one is here in Scrimba. Is there anyone? I hope you are all able to see my screen. Let's go here. HTML, loading, head tag, close it. Okay, so in the head tag, you should include your style sheet. So actually, you can add a folder here, and you can also add a file in there. So let's say it's a good practice to have a folder called assets, and then go and create another folder, CSS. You can drag and drop it there. Okay, so now assets has a folder called the CSS. The CSS file will be located here. I just go and add a new file. Let's call this styles.css. Okay, the file is created outside. I'm going to move it. So I just drag and drop it. So the CSS file is located here. So now I'm going to add some colors like so percent and say be background. Uh, and let's go to the file A. So the CSS you have to link it. Use the link tag and you can say relation. That should like the path here. Just kidding. Most of the modern editors, like if you use any editor, you can see that I have an error in this line, so these tags are not showing complete. So it says it has an error here. So you can see that, like, if it's correct, you can see it shows the tag is correct. It's now highlighted correctly. But if it has an error, you can see that there is a problem. It's not in the correct. Uh, the colors doesn't match. The opening tag doesn't match the closing tag. So there is a problem. You can find out there is a problem there. So let's. So here now the problem is URL. The path to the file is in assets folder. Should be mentioning assets and CSS. File name is styles.css. I have imported the CSS now. And there are few methods like if you are going to import like this, that will work. Or you can actually do an import method and import a CSS like this as well. But that's kind of slightly advantage. I mean, sorry, it's kind of slightly advanced. It might be a little confusing in the beginning. So let's just go with the link method. Uh, then I'm going to create some nesting. So for the nesting, we can just practice some other HTML tags. Like I'm going to create a div, and I will try adding a class. So I say that as a parent. So anyone is with me? You are having snacks or dinner already? Okay, I will add another div here. So I call it like child. So I close this here. Continue. And, we should add some other tag. Like, let's say monkey. Action close. Tags are optional actually. You don't need to. Yeah. So whatever you add in the marquee, it will go on a loop and say loop equal to true. Okay. Okay, so we created a page and we applied the styles. So when you see the style sheet, I said the minimum height is 100%. I mean, yeah, 100% vertical height. So this is the vertical height. Um, so I mean, the height of your device, like if you are using a mobile, that's the height of your phone, or if you are using a tablet, it's the height of the tablet. So the body is going to take the 100% vertical height here, and okay, and let's go here. In the background color, Usually it's a hexadecimal, but you can actually call this method as well. So I should be adding 6. So it's hexadecimal value, hexadecimal color code. Oh, sorry, hex code. It doesn't have to be a decimal. It's a hex code since it's a 6-digit. And here I mentioned the color. So you can see that this is in white color, but the other property and the other property value, they are in blue because I didn't add a semicolon. So the compiler is expecting a semicolon. So I will make it as X. Now you can see it's in blue and the code is. So if this is correct, then let's go back to our nesting.html. So here you can see this is a parent and this is its child. So you can imagine that as a box. It has a box and there is another box inside. Or you can say it like it's a big building and there is a room inside, and this is inside the room. There is, let's say, there's a another area. So this is where the content is going to be displayed. Let's see. Let's click run. You can see the preview there. Yeah. So this is the preview. I guess text is not readable. Change the or maybe this one. We can change the color to something dark. Maybe 3 will do. So now let's run it. So you can see I just added some marquee tag, and right now no one is using it. Okay. Let's go to our preview here again. And you can see if we change some tags here, the value will change. Like you don't have to add a strong tag. Instead, you can say actually directly access the element here. So this is our parent. So we can add a color for parent, and we can add a color for the child, and we can also add some property to the marquee. So let's get started here. So to create a new rule set, your classes starts with a dot, and if it's an identifier ID should start with a hash. So the parent, we are going to say maybe change a different color here, so background. So we are just changing some colors just to get a feel like how the parent and others look. So you can also add some the readable colors here. I'm going to add some padding. I'll add it here and then I will explain what padding does shortly. Okay, and I guess this will do it. Or you can add a border here. Border, yep. Okay, I added a border also. Now let's review it. So you can see it has a border, and I think the color is really off. Let's review it. Striking the eyes, so I'll just change the color to something else. Be gray with it. So this is mild. Okay, maybe I should stop over here. Distracting us. Save it button. Yeah, so you can see we have a paragraph here, and the paragraph is in a child container, and the child is within a parent container. Now we added a padding and a color to the parent. We are going to see, we're going to add some more changes to the child element here. So to access the child, let's go with the child. I guess some of you guys are already familiar with like let's say GS, CSS and JavaScript. You might be already working with React or something, or you might be already building websites with no code or low code technologies. Oh, so excuse me for some of you all, it might be boring because it's a known concept. What we can make it here, let's say like and here, okay, let's make padding here also, so padding and pixel again. And then the color should be different, like I'm changing it from white to black. Okay, so you can type black here. Yeah, I'm changing it to black here. It's a run. So you can see the gray box. The gray box is the parent. That's the gray in the background. The white is the child, and they both have a 10 pixel padding. And the font and the style that comes from our main body element here. So you can make this bold. You can make this bold by, like, let's add another paragraph here. So, yeah. So you see that there is no difference between the first and second. If you want to make a difference, like if you want to change color or do some stuff, let's say if you want to make this, make your the second message as bold, like in a, if you want to emphasize this one, you can use this one, like you can say strong. Yeah, so you get it now, it's strong, it's emphasized. But instead of adding a tag there, you can control that output with just CSS. Let's see how to do that. So we are going to find a different selector. So this one, you should call that as a selector also. So we can say this is how you should define it. You can see from the hint says element class equal to parent. And this is a selector. So we are selecting the element that has the class parent. Now we are going to add some style, like for paragraph, it's going to be, let's say the color of the paragraph is going to be, so let's say crimson. It works. And then font weight. Here, or I just change something here, maybe in fact, just to differentiate. So you can see the font color is changed. So we applied the font color to the using the selector paragraph. So if you want to make this one stand out than this one, you can add, like for example, if this is the welcome message, you can add some identifier here. You can say this is DSC hello. So this is the identifier. If the paragraph is this one, you want it to be like slightly something different. So you can create a class that's an ID. So we are going to use the ID here. And it will the rule we are going to say, maybe we can change the color. Color can be choose. Background is white, right? So just to make it different, you can add this way. So we are just changing the color here. And you see that this now is different because we are selecting this, use the identifier, and we are changing it. Now you can change the font family as well based on the identifier. So setting it as Arial. So when you run, you can see there's some difference here. Yeah. And there are a few ways to do it. Like the other way to do is using a nth child selector. We call that as like nth child. So you can say paragraph if it's nth child 2. So the nth child refers to like something like the mathematical expressions, the second occurrence. So it says if the paragraph, the second paragraph, it applies to the second paragraph. So you can change the color to, let's try. Yeah, it doesn't work because this is a higher level. It directly checks it. I mean, it's in the identifier is when you are selecting an element based on the class or ID or the pseudo selectors, we call this one as a pseudo, like pseudonym. It's not the it's not the real. It's not like here we are selecting it based on the element. Here we are selecting based on the element's identifier. Here we are selecting based on the element's class. But this is a pseudo, meaning like it's not something really existing. We don't know if the page has already second child. Sometimes it may not have a second child, I mean a second paragraph. So we call that as a pseudo selectors. So it doesn't work. So the other way to make it as important, when you say important, this rule will be executed. Yeah. So say when you and I said important, it works. But adding important is not the right way. So how you can get it done without saying it's important? Because if you say important, your browser is going to, let's say your browser is running, it takes like some level of CPU usage, like it takes some level of you know some microseconds or some time and the load. But if you are applying too many important tags, uh, your the performance of the site is going to be a little bit delayed because it's going to think which rule set should be applied, whether the color should be cyan or the color should be black. So to fix this one, as a beginner, from the day one, mostly avoid using important tags. You should use it only when there is no choice. But if you get the chance to override the color, you can do it by directly accessing the element. Instead of the nth child, you can access the if you have access to the HTML, it's recommended. it's good to make it as a, you can use the elements identifier, or you can say class. Hello. So let's say I'm having it as a class now, and I go to the style sheet. I'm going to make it like this one is. So this is a class. Let's see that, like this is a class. This is an ID. It doesn't make big difference, but it's, you should be careful when you are naming your CSS rules, or you should be also careful when you are adding an attribute in the properties. So sometimes you might get confused. Like you might be thinking this as a class, or like let's say if you interchange, if you want to change something, you might get confused, like whether I should change in the ID or I should change in the class or something. And let's see, because yeah, so you see here, this is actually a good example. So we are setting the color as crimson. Crimson is red, right? So something like we are setting the color as red here, and we are setting the color as cyan here. But why this this color shows the color of the cyan? Because your style sheet, this is applied second, but if you, this is the first, so your style sheet, this property, this rule set will be applied first. But when the code executes here, it will think, okay, like I have to apply crimson. So here will be red, and because of this code, it will be cyan, and it will be crimson. So I'm mentioning it correctly here. Yeah. So to avoid this type of confusion, it's like you should not use the same names, yeah, as a good practice. For example, if you are want to create an element with an ID, identifier is going to be unique. Your identifier should be unique for throughout your page. In one page, there should not be two IDs with the same, two elements with the same ID. So this hello element should be present only once. So when you are using an ID, it's even you can add something like you can add an ID to it, like so that you will know that it's an ID, or you can start with ID, ID. Hello. It's not recommended, but I mean it's not required, but it's recommended. Like you should be using some suggestive name, or like for example, if you say welcome, it means it's in the welcome area. Okay, let's get started with this one. How to override it correctly? Either you should use ID or the class, and you should avoid using the end child selector. And in some cases, if you are not sure, you can use this one. Like for example, you can use it to change the alternate colors, like background. So here, so if you want to have alternating rows have different colors, mostly we use it for tables, right? When you have a table, you want to make like one row and the other row should have some differentiation, so that it's good for the eyes, and you can differentiate. Okay, this is first row, this is second row, and this is that row like that. So to make that happen, we are going to add some more paragraphs in the code. Okay, let's go to just copy here. Another text. So you can see the first one doesn't have a background, and the other one has a background. It's because where is it? It's like gray and gray. There is no element with the name hello. I mean, with the name welcome. That's why it's not there. So we can add something like ID equal to welcome. And this ID is different. And for the third child, we can just add some more, like for example, I can just leave it at another. You can see the first one has the color is changed and it has a background. Others should have a background. Let us check why. Why the back screen option is not working? I think I'm missing something here. Anyone find the what I'm missing here, boys? There is something that I miss here, so it's not showing correctly. Yes, it's a class. Should be ID. And what else? Yeah, it's ID and number 2, and for the number 2, we should have something like, let's say like pink. Okay. So now you see that we have one row in gray, another one is in the lighter gray, and the CSS is applied correctly. So let's go on to the next set of attributes. And you see here we are accessing it with the nth child, right? But it doesn't work because the second child, I mean the second paragraph. This is the second paragraph. The second paragraph already has a identifier. It has an ID. So whatever is mentioned here, it will not work because it has an ID. So CSS prefers ID over, this is a real element, this is a real attribute, but this is just a pseudo level, so it doesn't give priority to this. So we can try with an important, let's say this rule is important. Yeah, since I say that's important, it works. But we should avoid using important. Okay, let's recap what we've seen here. So we added a parent element and a child element. We added padding. Um, we tried with an identifier and a class, and then also we have a background. What do you call it? Like we tried some important tag in with a pseudo selector. Let's go to list. So here, I'm gonna just copy paste so that we can see the demos quickly. Let's go to the list here. So this is an unordered list. So this has no order. So So you can add a list of items here, and it's gonna display. So when you run this one, so you can get this. This is unordered list. So it's a list of items, but they are not ordered. They are not in any particular order. I mean, they are in the order like it should be in the order one below the other, but they are not showing with the numbers. This is good for few items. If you have very few points, something to say, if you have a product, if you are going to display a page for the product, in the product's features you are going to display, you can say like that. Like, let's say if you are displaying about a laptop, you can say what's the clock speed, what's the RAM, what are the other features. So you can add an unordered list. You don't have to be in a particular order. Or something like if you have something that needs an order, at that time you have to use ordered list, OL. Maybe my pronunciation is a little hard to follow, so I can say like ordered list. And I think this schools teach this one. Just pass this one quickly. Um, the class here. So you can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So instead you can change it like what's there in beach? The Iloilo city, I don't know. But the there's this make it just 2. Okay. So you can see that like if you want to display something in a particular order, like let's say top 5 white sand beaches in the Philippines. So you can say Boracay is the best and Palawan is the second, something like that. Or yeah, something like if you want to have it in a ordered list, you want to have a number, then you can use this one. And we'll try to add the where's it? This and try to add the style here in the index.css. It's a class, so it's a list. And your class names should also be suggestive so that you will not get confused. So this is a list, and I'm gonna say a in my style, list style type. So let's run this one. You can see there is the 1, 2, 3 is gone. So when you apply this one, list style type none, it will be gone. So I mean this property we use it to hide the bullets. Like if sometimes you want to show the items in a list, but you don't want to show the numbers or you don't want to show that ugly dots over there. So you can just use this one, list style type. Uh, but in this case, we want to show the numbers. Okay. I think I have to apply that to the airline. Yeah, if you want to display them in a single line, you can use like this. Like they will be displayed adjacent to each other, not in a single lines, not separated by line breaks. And this also applies to ordered list or unordered list before. And you can add actually some padding between each items. Padding. pixels. Borders. Color. Let's go through this quickly as the box model. So now let's see the box model here. It's better to read their documentation itself. Yeah, so I hope it is clear so you can be able to see here. This is your box, like example this element, like this is our box. We call that as a box model. A box is your element will be placed like you can have a parent and a child, but to align the elements, like you will, if you don't have a padding or a margin, your content may stick to the walls, to the lines of your element, so it will not look good, it will not be readable. So to make it more readable, more elegant, so we have to add some padding and margin. The margin is between one to the other, like margin is the outside one, it's like one box to the another box, we call that as margin. But padding is the space between your box and your content. So if you want that to be sticking to each other, uh, you should not have zero margin. So one box will be sticking to the another box. If you want your content to stick to the element, like there should be no, you don't want the content to have some space, remove the padding. So if you apply padding, your content will have some space. If you apply margin, what the space between one box to the another box will be increased based on how you are doing. And the normal notation is we will be having like top, right, and bottom and left, like top, right, bottom, and left. Maybe you can think it like a clockwise direction from the top, right, bottom, and left. So not sure if you are seeing my mouse here. Let's go and see in the CSS. So if you say padding 10 pixels, it means the padding will be applied to all the four sides, like top, bottom, right, and left. They are going to have the same padding. So if you say 10 pixel and versus 30 pixels, so this means top and bottom will be, the top and bottom padding will be 10 pixels, but the right and left padding will be 30 pixels. So when you run it, you can see the difference. Like you see the space between the number 1 and the letter B is more, but when you see on the top and bottom, they are just 10. Now I will reverse it and you can see the changes here. So I'll make this as 40 and this as just 10. So when you run it, you can see the top and bottom, they are more, and the left and right, they are less. And now let's try the margin also. Before we check the margin, maybe I'll say just 0 first. Yeah, so now you can see the border, right? Each element has a border, but Boracay is now like sticking to Palawan. Like the first element and the second element, they don't have space between each other. But if you apply a margin, they will have some space. So let's add some space here. Let's say 10 pixels. So if you run it, the margin is applied to all the areas. Like you can see on the right side, it's here, and the left side is there, top, bottom, everywhere. So let's say we want only for the bottom and other sides we don't need it. So you make it like top 0. If it's 0, you don't have to mention as 0 pixels. So that's like 0. In right side, it's going to be 0. Top right, and then this is bottom, and this is left. So we want padding, we want margin only on the bottom. So now when you run, you can see it's on the right side, bottom only. On the right side, there is no padding here. You can see the border touches the edge. So now you know the box model. That's a kind of very important concept in CSS. So we have seen the list. Let's summarize it again. Like if you want to have numbers, you should use ordered list. And if you use the list style type none, like if you set the property of the style type as none, you cannot see the dots or numbers. And if you want to display them in a single line, use display in line, like list style display in line, that you can get them in a single line. And then, okay, let's go to the layout. So now we are going to create some layout here. It's going to be header and footer. Or maybe let's make the header as a menu or as a list. List. So now we are using the second lesson here, like the nesting. The header is having another element here, and we should see the indentation here. Everything should be indented, so when you click, you can see, okay, the body ends here, header ends here, the ordered list starts here, ends here. You can see that. So I'm making it as an unordered list. In the unordered list, yeah, let it be like that. This is going to be a menu, so I will call that as a menu. And let's have a main area. Let's say main. And also let's have a footer. And mostly footer is just copyright, right? So you can add a copyright text. And HTML has some cool tags like this copy. So you say that you will get a copyright symbol in the front end. Let's say 2021. 2020 is not a good year for many of us. So, so let's make it as 2021. You can say all rights reserved. Let's go to header and main content area. Let's run it without CSS first. Yeah, so it doesn't look like a header, footer, but you can see there's a copyright symbol there. So let's make it as, let's apply some style and make it, make the layout better quickly. I guess we are running out of time, but anyway, I just, obviously this is basics here, just images pending, and the forms and others can just run through. Okay, let's go here. So we have a UL called menu, and we have a header, we have main, and we have footer. So let's add the CSS here. Let's make this as a menu. If it's a menu in LI, we're going to say display inline. And we're going to say list style type none. Okay, so just to recap, it's like the rule set starts with the curly braces and it ends here. And this is the class and this is the element. So to access a element within the class, you have to mention it. For example, if you have a paragraph here, you can say like, hey, select the paragraph that is inside this class. You are telling the CSS, like the style sheet, to find the element that has the class menu and find the paragraph that is within this menu. So now we are going to find all the list items, and they are going to be displayed in line, one next to the other, and the dots will not be there. Yeah, so they are now displaying in line, and there's no dots. And actually, we should add the header here. It's a good practice to start from the bottom to start top to the bottom. Uh, Header, going to say background gray, height, 80 pixels, and vertical align, middle. Yeah, okay. And then each list item, I want to have a padding. Let's run without a padding first. Yeah, you can see that there's no padding. They are just they are aligning next to each other. Padding and making it as 5 pixels first. So everything has now 5 pixels padding, but you cannot see any big difference. And we can reduce the height of this to 40 pixels. Okay, now it looks like a menu. So that's the header, and the header has a menu. And now go to the main area. So you can see that main is a tag in HTML file. So it tells your browser that it's a main content. So we are going to say main will have a background color of white, and it will have a padding of 10 pixels, and it will have a it doesn't have to have margin. So let's add a adding margin. That's minimum height. So we can add minimum height as like 200 pixels, and let's run it. This is the content area. So you can see it has, since we added 200 pixels, the all rights reserved go down, like footer goes down here. So you, let's say if we change it to 100 pixels, like 150 pixels, you can see it moves up. Then to make the elements more look good, you can add generally the color, like font family, say Arial, I guess. That looks even better. And let's add some color to the footer. Footer, and also add it as a background color. So we added some color here, and we can say text align. There's alignment property, we didn't see that earlier. So text align center. So it will be aligned in the center. Yeah, here we go. It's in the center, and we applied some color, and you can see there is no padding, so it is sticking to almost sticking to the wall of the element. So we are going to add some padding here. Yeah, so looks looks horrible, but you can see some difference here. And let's see, we add some color to the main, and we can see how the margin works. So let's add some color background to say light gray. So when you say light gray, all these elements are sticking to each other. There's no margin between them. So now let's add a margin. So top 10 pixels, right can be 0, bottom 20 pixels, and left side can be 0. You can see there is the top it's 10 pixels, in the bottom it's 20 pixels. And you know why we get white here? Because by default, the browser takes white color. So you can actually add a background color of something just to check. Add only a darker black color here. So now you can see everything has the gray color, dark gray color. Okay, see here we learned something, and we learned the layout elements like header, footer, main, and you can also add a side, like for if you want to have a sidebar, you should be using this aside. Now let's go to some images. I guess we're running out of time. We might be a very long image. An image is a self-closing tag. You don't have to close it another way. Let's go to I hope some of you are having cats. So I like cats more. Can add the image source here. Yeah, see there is a cat here. And the color is body color, change it to gray because we added it in the style. And now we can make it like a rounded corner. So to make it rounded corner, we can add a class and say rounded. So footer is the last part. So we should add the other CSS within, like it's a good practice. Say rounded, like border, radius, pixels. Doesn't look that good, so maybe we create 50%. But still looks over. Anyway, that you can how you can change the edge. You can add like shadow. You can add more properties to images. And it's important to set max width for an image. So let's see what this maximum width does quickly. So for example, if I'm gonna make it like class small post this div, and you can see following the indentation. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to add. I'm going to select this element with the class. Let's go to this age dot small. I'm going to set width is equal to 100 pixels. or maybe let's say 50 pixels. So I make that the small one, and I'm going to say padding 10 pixels. So let's run it. Yeah, you see, I made that as small, and I set also maximum width here for the image. If I don't say the maximum width, the image will overwrite it. Like you can see, it doesn't stay within the container. So how you can see that, you can add a background color here. Yeah. Okay. So you see that this is the white color is my div. So I'm going to also add a height here. Let's say height is up to 50 pixels. So it's like a small square. So my content is here. The image is supposed to be within inside. But if you don't say if you don't specify the width, the image will overflow. Uh, so you should say maximum width is 100%. So what it will do is it will take the maximum width of the parent container. So the rounded is within the small. So the small height and width is 50 pixels. So it will try to fit in there. And since we added some padding, the width is like this. So we remove the padding and it will fit perfectly. Yeah. So that's, yeah, almost I covered this one. And you can practice it. I sent you the Simba. And, yes, I have one more. It's where the yeah. So I added some images here and with my CSS. You can see I added some background color. I created some colors, some rule sets. And for main container, I added a background as an image. And I'm saying that position, it should be center, the size, and the margin, minimum height. So I'm setting some CSS here, and this is the code. So for this one, we are using Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is a CSS framework that allows you to create the layouts and UI components quickly. Whatever you need for your user interface, like alerts, pop-ups, list, menu, forms, everything is there in Bootstrap. You can start with Bootstrap. Bootstrap is not the best in the industry now. You can go with Tailwind or others. There is Bulma CSS. There are many advanced ones, but you can start with Bootstrap. It's a good place. So you can see here, we are declaring the meta viewport. There is a meta tag, and we are saying this one width is equal to device width. It means we are saying, hey, respond to the width. Like if you are using an iPhone, it will adjust to the size of an iPhone. If you are viewing an iPad, it will adjust to the size of the iPad. And you don't have to remember or memorize this one. You can just copy paste it in all your projects. Uh, and this is the style sheet, our style sheet, and this is the style sheet from Bootstrap. So this is a third-party style. It's not, I didn't download or upload here, but you can link third-party URLs also here. It's just in the href in your hyperlink reference, and just link. You can mention the link. The integrity and cross-origin attributes tells you like sometimes the hackers exploit this one. We call that as cross-site scripting. And so to avoid that, you are just checking the integrity, whether it is from the same origin, it's the same file. And we don't have to mostly worry about it. You can just actually copy paste from uh, most of the third-party tools. If you are going to use jQuery or Bootstrap or any file, you can get that with this integrity and cross-origin, and you can just paste and use it. Here in the body, I just have a class here, added a navigation bar, nav menu, And here you can see this is the main. So it tells the role is main. It means this is the main content is here. So this is kind of World Wide Web rules. You should be declaring the role. Like for example, if it's a site, like a site, you should mention like it's an aside or it's a sidebar. Like, and then I have some. Let's say I have a row, I have a column, I have a box. I just added it, and Bootstrap has all these styles, the classes, so you can read it from Bootstrap. And just I added this content, and we seen this inline, right? Like list inline. You don't have to write that code by yourself. Bootstrap will do it. So you just add the class name and this one, and it will display inline. So when you run it, it's not going to look exactly like uh, Netflix page, but you can see, just with some code, whatever. Okay, I guess I have a mistake because you tried to access an internet. Able to record. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Let's go here. Let's see. Mm, Symbols. I think Simba wants to record it. Yeah, I just click preview, but it still doesn't. Okay, let's see how it looks in Netlify. I just launched it as well. So you can see the page looks like this. I've created and edited with the bootstrap. So you can see when you see the page source, you can see it as this style sheet and what else. Yeah, you can see the content here, the image, the product, some logo. This is the nav bar, and you can see it has an ordered list. And maybe it's not readable. Let's go and try to upload some of the things that we get here. So actually, you can download your code from Scrimba itself. So all these files, let's get downloaded. Uh, mm, yeah, you can download the zip file, and you can go to Netlify to create a Netlify account and go to your sites. There is an option you can just drag and drop your zip file. And Netlify will set it up for you. I guess it's now done. Yeah, this is our first page. And what's the other page? Like let's say list.html. Maybe list. Okay. Yeah, this is the list, the one that we created, and then image. That's the image, that kitty, and what else? We'll try with layout. Yeah, now it's not just it's going to be in Scrimba. So once you deploy it, anyone can see with this link, and you can set up a custom domain and can uh, quickly launch it. And what else? Let's go back to just here. Okay, let's review the concepts quickly. We learned some HTML tags, and there are some advanced tags you should be using, like canvas, video, like embedding, and those tags are will be used in the modern applications more. And you should be learning attributes. We'll start with global attributes like what is a class, what is an ID, style, how to add a title tag or alt tag for images. We'll start with the global attributes and then we'll go with the advanced. And I didn't cover forms or tables here, because tables we are not going to use it often. But for forms, forms itself, it takes it has more elements. So uh, I recommend you to read and try by yourself, and let me know your adventure there with HTML. And what about CSS selectors? Yeah, we learned some CSS selectors and also pseudo selector. And for responsive web design, it should, like for example, this one. Oh yeah, we didn't set anything for responsive. I'm not sure. Let's try this one. Quick inspect, and this is developer tools. Sure, if you can able to see it. Yeah. So this is developer tools, and click and let's say you can inspect an element here and you can change something. So for example, instead of the TV dramas, I want it to be maybe like biography. Something you can change something in it. You can just see how it looks. Uh, you can also check the responsive view, how it will look in the mobile. So you can see in mobile like this, it's going to be like this. You can see that her face is it's hidden because it's responding to the screen size. Yeah, you can see now. You can see her face in the screen size. The it's big. Adjusted. So this one up top, and you can see the space. There is some black gray area here, and when you see in the tablet, the area got reduced. Go to mobile, the face is getting hidden to this side. This is how you can look mobile. Okay. Okay. You can ask questions if you have any.
So guys, you can ask question now. You can open your mic or just send your questions in the chat and we'll read it for you.
Okay, so this is the presentation. And get the resources link here. And what else? This is the stream.code code for it. You can check the page that I created.
Good evening, sir.
Yes. Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yes.
a question. When is it uh, required to use SCSS over the CSS?
Uh, if you are using a simple site, you can go with just CSS. If you are building a modern tool, go with a CSS or SAS. Meaning, if you want to use variables, for example, in my example, I showed you some changing colors, right? I was changing colors uh, like gray, black on my mind, on my own. But in a real project, you cannot do like that. So let's say if you are designing for Jollibee, you have only three colors, right? For Jollibee, it will be red and yellow, and mostly it's like that. So that will be your accent colors, like primary and accent colors. And you will design that color, define that colors. You will be using it. You don't have to mention the color name again and again. You don't have to create the root set again and again. So when you are to reuse your components by yourself, that time we will be using a CSS and SAS, CSS or SAS, whichever is easy.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, I would say it's not limited. You can, let's say it's unlimited. I mean, with just HTML, now there are modern applications. You can even run a game with just HTML5 and basic JavaScript. So, uh, yeah, it has more uses other than just designing simple pages. It has more uses. So, how about you guys? I want you, all of you, all to mention your favorite programming language or what you are going to be. Maybe if you are want to be just a gamer, you want to streaming games, that's good as well, because playing games will help you, think strategically and able to solve you what you call that, like problem solving skills. So if you are good at games, you can be a good programmer. Any of your professors is looking at this workshop now? I don't feel like I'm talking to students here. Usually students will talk more, right? I'm becoming Tito, that's why maybe I talk less. But you guys are very young, I should be expecting more questions or answers from you. Okay, guys, I think in this just it's 2 hours is a very short time, and um, maybe some of you all already know what we discussed today. But to take it to next level, like if you want to learn something else, like also other than let's say HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or like backend like PHP, like Python, or anything, you can just let me know. You can learn through emails. Let's say you can share your code, or we can form a study group where you can learn with your friends, or you can learn through email correspondence. You can just email me your questions and I can reply you back. And I hope it also will also help. Any more questions? Anything we missed? Uh, I guess we covered on this point. Yeah. Yeah, Chrome Inspector or in Firefox, and every browser has the developer tools that helps you to check the performance of your page or your application, how fast it loads, and also you can check with your JavaScript functions, and you can also find your elements. You can, instead of changing the colors, like for example, if you are designing a page with color blue and you think maybe color green is good, you don't have to go and change it in the CSS and uh, deploy it again or again run it. So instead, you can just use the inspect function, inspector, and you can change the color and quickly preview it. So there are a lot of uses with developer tools. Learning developer tools itself a great skill. If you know developer skill as a student, I'm sure you will be definitely hired as a designer or developer. Document type is we are telling the browser what type of document it is. By default, it's going to be HTML5, and I think 1992 or 95 they declared the doc type uh, just to tell the browser what type of document it is. And in HTML, you have to also mention the HTML tag. You have the first tag. You have to also mention the language. Is it going to be English or any other language? So that's the purpose. We are just declaring it, and if you don't add it, actually, it's okay. It's not a big problem. Your browser will add it by itself. Where is this input? Hmm. Oh, web one. I mean, I guess you mean to. We are asking about what language or what tool, I guess. So um, let's say for web development, you can go with Node.js because JavaScript is the next big, not just the next big thing. It's going to be there for another few years. Sorry to say like that. I think I take back my words because it's going to be the future and it's also now on the top. So instead of learning language like PHP or something, you can start with PHP also. So if you want to be a web developer, you can go with any one of it, like either PHP, Python, or JavaScript. I recommend JavaScript because if you learn JavaScript, you can you will get familiar with the front-end frameworks as well. So you can use either React or Vue.js or Angular or anything that you like. So getting with JavaScript is good. And for games, I think Unity is good, right? So Unity framework is nice. So when it comes to programming, uh, you should be understanding the concept. When you understand the concept and the syntax only differs, but the concept, the logic behind it is going to be the same. So when you understand it and practice it, then you will be enjoying programming. Yeah, if it's um, let's say if it's going to be a web development, uh, you should be doing by yourself, not using page builders like TV, Elementor, kind of thing, because they are the content will be already. I mean, the layouts and everything will be already there, so you can learn a little out of it. If you are going to be a developer, you should learn how to build things. Uh, you can start with the very simple applications and you can learn by yourself. And there is no wrong in learning WordPress also, right? Because with WordPress also you can build something. So if you are going to use WordPress, don't use just what is it there. You can just try to learn and try to extend it. Yeah, maybe. You can see, you can refer this site as a beginner. And also, the most recommended one is Microsoft Developer Network. Sorry, Mozilla Developer Network. And Microsoft is also having a free course. So there are a lot of resources for you to learn. Let's say if you go to technologies, HTML, so you can learn more from here. You can use the reference, their tutorials, and also you can learn CSS and JavaScript. Okay, that's good. Okay, let's see. That's good. So you all can start with this JavaScript here. The reason is JavaScript is doesn't require anything to run. Like when you just use your browser, you don't need to install any other stuff, unless maybe Node.js, like some stuff. So uh, if you are learning Python or C++ as well or anything, you think not C++, but others like you will be using JavaScript. That's nice. Okay, guys. this one. Because Microsoft has a free course, I guess. I'm not sure. The other important thing we missed is the forms. You can learn forms or anything. It's good to start with forms and the canvas and other stuff in CSS. Any questions, guys? I'm not sure whether you can able to catch up with my Indian accent. Let me know if you able to understand. Close this one. Guys, let me know if you have any questions.
I think there's no more questions here.
Madam, yeah. And then share this link. If anyone is interested to learn more, you can visit the resource where you can find the free code camp. There are other good tools as well, and Scrimba also has an introduction to HTML course. That's nice. You can learn it. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for listening. I hope you learned something. Either something like how to use Scrimba or at least some HTML tags or something new. I didn't go with advanced ones because it will be confusing as a beginner. It's good to start with step by step. You can practice it, and if you feel like anything stuck somewhere, you can just message me. I'm more active in Twitter and everywhere. Thank you.
Um, and that concludes our workshop for basic web development. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you, Mr. Lax, for sharing your knowledge in HTML and CSS. I hope you guys have learned a lot in this event.